Hey everyone, today we're here to talk about the shift to community-driven events, and we have both Mai and Nihal, who, as Beth said, are co-founders of Aventus, a company that Bevy recently acquired, and we're going to dig into all the details here today. So first off, Mai and Nihal, it would be awesome to have you both just talk a little bit about um, your background in events and also why you're so passionate about the work that you do. You both have you've spoken globally all over the world. You have been building, you're engineers at heart. You've been building events for a long time. Talk to us a little bit more about sort of the evolution of your work at Aventus and event software as a whole. And maybe, Nihal, we can have you take that first.
Sure. Thanks, GR. I'm so excited actually to be here. So a little bit of background about myself. I was the co-founder and chief product officer at Eventus. We started Eventus like maybe 10 years ago with the idea of trying to make events better, try to enhance the experience of events and help attendees maximize the value of their events by offering them a mobile app that can help them plan and network with attendees. So I've been building products for the event industry, I think, for the past 10 years, and it's so exciting. I love it. I was leading the product team at Eventus, and with the acquisition of Eventus, as Beth said, I joined Bevy as director of product management. We've seen a lot of things actually during the past 10 years in events, and the things that actually excites me the most about this industry is there is a lot of things to improve and a lot of solutions to do and a lot of things to solve. From my perspective, I believe that focusing on the attendee experience and the event experience and how actually attendees experience the event and get value out of the event has been always my motivation and what makes me want to build more and more and more in this industry. And also, when we started, we wanted to bring the people together, and we were doing this like only for one-off events. But with the acquisition of Bevy, I'm so excited about actually bringing this and working on this, not just for like one time a year to help the people bring together and network together, but also help them all year long. Um, this is actually my first time to attend the CMX Summit, but I've been a member and admirer of the CMX community, I think, since it started in 2015. So I'm so excited and happy actually to be here today.
Yeah, I love that. I This is my third, and it feels like every year there's just like something so new and fresh about it. And even for folks who are maybe joining for the first time, if you are, let us know in chat. We'd love to give you a warm welcome. But as you said, Nihal, even if you've only been like, circling around CMX or have only heard about it, you've probably heard good things. But you said something that I want maybe Mai you can dig into a little bit more, which is like um, events have existed for a long time, and technology for events has too. Mai, you've been building for the last 10 years at least on this kind of thing. What is it about the industry and the evolution of events that still sort of provides opportunity that Nihal was mentioning? Like, how is it still that there's so much to do?
Sure. Hello, everyone at CMX. Very excited to be here. First time to speak at CMX. I think I have a little bit of delay, so I might look or sound weird. So sorry for that. I love events. I built this and I joined. We started Eventus because we love events. We used to attend a lot of events. Actually, COVID probably was the biggest disruption to the events industry since inception, since this industry started. And with that, it brings probably the most innovation to the industry in terms of technology, because overnight people had to figure out how to run events, which is it was very challenging, very disparate at some times, but it's very um, we have seen innovations coming to this area. And I think with the future of events, with hybrid events, everyone's talking about hybrid events. Are we going back to in-person events? Are we going to have large conferences and small meetups, or everything will be virtual? I think it will be a mix between this and that. And it's actually our job as technology, event tech experts to figure out solutions to help communities and event managers to figure out what they are doing. I don't think there is like one solution fits everyone or fits every scale. Every event is different. Every community might be different. Our job is to try to find that in all and help event managers deliver amazing events.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that, like, historically, you have a lot of brands or communities that are running events here and there. You might have one event a month, or one event a quarter, or something like that. But this idea that galvanize your community and have a community-led program where they're running events on your behalf. Nihal, through Eventus, you've seen a lot of companies. You've powered their single event. Their annual conference or whatever it might be. You've seen that, but what's so special about the companies that do more, that sort of get their community involved, and what have you seen work well there?
Sure. I think it goes back again to experience. So I think it all boils down to focusing on the attendee experience and the event experience. So for the before, we worked mostly with one-off events, and I've seen a trend or a pattern of conferences who understood the power of community. They eventually grew into building a community. So organizers who believe in the value and the importance of community, they usually build their one conference around that idea, the way they structure their communication with their audience, the way they create the whole event experience, from the agenda to the networking and everything else. Everything helps foster engagement and collaboration. And attendees feel that they feel they are part of something bigger, not just one event. And this creates actually a sense of belonging. And also some of those conferences, when they have like a dedicated app for their conference, this helps a lot with creating the base of this community. And I've seen this done several times actually by organizers. So I think it's about the mindset and how they approach things, how they are solving the problems that you want to solve. Are they just doing one event, or they are building community around a specific idea or a specific topic? But I think the problem I see with some organizers who want to build a community but don't actually, is that they don't know how to start or where to start. Some of them, it requires a lot of time and money to manage and build communities, and maybe think that it's not worth it. So I think it's an education thing. It starts with education, and actually CMX is doing a great job making it easier for organizers to know where to start. I think also with the rise of virtual events, it will become easier, because now running virtual events requires less investment, less time, less money. So we will see more organizers actually doing more frequent, smaller events as we go. So the way I see it is, if the organizer actually understand what a community stands for, they have this mindset, with a little bit of planning and maybe with the right tool or platform, it will be easier for them to transition from just doing one conference into building a full community. And this is very powerful, because instead of delivering value to your audience one time a year, you deliver value to your audience all year long, which is, I think it's a very powerful thing. And I think this is actually a trend, and a lot of conferences are beginning to do this and focus on this more.
Mai, you've sat on a number of global panels, one namely with Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, and a few other people. But those were all in-person conferences, right? They were large scale single events, and then as Nihal mentioned with the pandemic, we're all of a sudden in this place where everything's virtual. And I think one thing that we've seen through the communities that we work with at Bevy is like a lot of these communities had virtual before. It just wasn't prominent because people were yearning for that in-person connection. But now you have to have a virtual component. And I think Nihal's right. Virtual has enabled much more community building, maybe not in the same like, thoughtful and engaging, authentic way that we yearn for in person, but it certainly increased the breadth and the access for folks who maybe couldn't engage in person. Where do you see this going? Like, what's next?
That's a great question. Mix between the two types. Again, there's no like one right answer or one right solution that fits all events, all communities. Was maybe smaller events that happens on the side or all year long, and then we'll see. Like if we're talking about the big conference, I think the perfect hybrid event in my mind is basically where you have a VIP experience as an in-person attendee, and then you will have a different experience as a virtual attendee. So it's all about personalization and building a dedicated experience for each type of events. For example, if you are at the event in person, all what you need is to meet with people. There's nothing that beats handshake and meeting people in person. But right now, we as professionals, we will opt what events and be selective on the type of events that attending in person. And I think this is the case for everyone. So it needs to be a different experience. It needs to be a very personalized experience, and tech can play a very good role here by all the personalization. An app, for example, can give you like meeting schedule with different people. Visiting booths and exchanging contacts, and we will see all of that virtual, like it will be contactless. We might see a lot of like um, um, different type of technologies, and then for virtual events we need to be mindful of distractions, because even people get used to virtual events right now, but it's very distracting. And you might get an email and you need to click on it, and you can just go somewhere else and forget about events. So event managers and events platform in general, and be mindful for that and find different ways to keep the event engaging and keep the energy going to the attendees. So we will see like a bit of this and that, and it depends on the company. If a community is building to share with with the community members their news, their information, there's a lot of different setup and different types of events they can organize. And one one big event a year, I don't think we'll see that on a larger scale soon. There's a lot of like the COVID situation is not very clear anymore, and I think whenever we feel it's going to end, there's something happened, and we're starting all over the situation again. So I think it will be very dangerous for event managers to organize like a pure in-person event soon without a digital component or without a virtual, at least a backup, especially with travel restrictions everywhere. It's very difficult. So instead of seeing like one big event with thousands of attendees, we'll see smaller size with a different virtual experience. We want to attend from everywhere. And then a year-long engagement throughout different type of events to bring the community together.
So I want to dig into that a little bit more, Mai. You're saying that virtual is an imperative. Like you have to have a virtual component of what you're doing, considering the pandemic, but even beyond that, like tailoring the attendee experience to meet them where they are. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, of course. Virtual events are here to stay, like it or not. even if we go back to in-person, virtual events is a very integral component of events moving forward. And it would be very important.
Nihal, what can community managers who are listening do to make sure that virtual is incorporated into their program in the right way? I mean, do you have to, where do you start? What would you say?
So I think it depends, as Mai said, on the case. I think you have to optimize for what you are trying to do and what you are trying to build. So I think maybe I will talk a little bit about something first. There was a problem at the beginning of virtual when people trying to do virtual is they tried to mimic the in-person event experience, which is a completely a mistake, because what worked for in-person didn't work cannot for virtual. So I think you will have to optimize your event based on what you are trying to achieve and the tools that you have. So virtual can actually be different depending on the goal of the community manager. If it's a networking event, it's different. If it's content mainly and workshops, if it's more like a webinar. So there is a lot of options to do and a lot of actually tools that can support all of those goals. But it starts by trying to understand what are you trying to achieve, what is your goal of having this event, what is your strategy, and then you can create the whole journey around that and figure out what tools actually you can use to help you deliver this goal or this milestone. But I think, as you both said, that virtual is actually here to stay, and virtual is enabling a lot of community managers and a lot of organizers to scale easier. Maybe it was difficult before because you have to do a lot of logistics and a lot of planning, and you have to spend a lot on different things, venues and things like that. But virtual made it very easy for people actually to start building a community with the minimum minimum investment. So I think it opened a lot of opportunities, but again, we'll have to be mindful of how are we going to do it, because we don't want to overwhelm our community. We don't want to be like misusing the platform or the tools that we have.
Nihal, can you go a little bit further there? Like what's an example of where you might go wrong in thinking about like the right way to leverage virtual versus the wrong way?
Sure. So I think when we started building at Eventus, we mostly did in-person events at the beginning. We did it for so long, and I believe we were really good at it. We cracked all the problems and the needs of all event types. And then COVID happened, and we had to build a virtual solution. And in this process, actually, we discovered some differences. For example, the format that you can do for some events, for some in-person events, cannot fit a virtual event. I think actually it's very interesting what we are doing in CMX by motivating people to go do something and stretch and so you will have to figure out ways of accommodating the different setup and the different environment and the different experience to make sure that people don't get tired, people don't get distracted, people don't get they lose interest in what's happening. But I think the most difficult thing actually to crack in virtual is the networking, because networking is based on human connections. So I think this is the hardest thing to crack, and I think a lot of organizers do it in a different way. They try to create different setups and networking rooms or things to allow people to network together, and this also will become more difficult in hybrid, because networking in hybrid will be a disaster. It will be very difficult to crack if you want to connect these people connecting virtually and those people attending in person. But it's interesting seeing how much technology has advanced, and to see it help a lot of community managers and a lot of organizers actually achieve things they couldn't achieve easily before.
Yeah, I think the networking one is a great example, particularly my going back to your point about hybrid. Like people, when you show up to an in-person event, you know you might be there on behalf of your company or your business, and maybe your goal is to actually meet people and build your business versus some other attendee may be going because they're really passionate about the topic or the content, or they're really yearning for like a sense of belonging and um, connecting with other people that are like-minded and that they can learn from. And I think with networking, Nihal, that's a great point. Like, what are the different ways that you can connect those people together, particularly if some are there in person and some are, dialed in, if you will, from home. There was actually a question in Q&A that I'm going to skip to because I think it fits really nicely into this. Let me pull it up here. Federica asked, can you share some examples of runs of show of virtual events versus in-person ones? Is there anything we should have in both? Oh, it got answered. It just removed. I was finishing reading, but run of show for these two types of events. Can you compare the two? And is there anything that like should absolutely exist in both, or how do they differ?
Actually, that's a very, and there's something, when we started the virtual platform at Eventus after COVID, I a lot of customers and event managers came to me and said, like, we want our event to be different. We don't want to be very similar like this other event. So we want to use the platform differently, or we want to use a different form for this reason. But actually, I have seen people who are being very, very creative with virtual events, and the same for hybrid event for hybrid and in-person events. Like, for example, you can have the same um, virtual events, for example, that run on Eventus or Bevy or any other platform. This is a virtual venue. It's very similar to an physical venue, and it's up to you as an event manager or organizer to be creative to use it. You have the tools, and instead of having like a physical space, now you have different features, different tools to help you figure out a different experience for attendees. For example, we have seen some events on Eventus that run an entire job interview selection and all of that on the platform during the event. So this was announcement about like a job opening or something, and then one-on-one interviews with candidates who apply to job, and then the selection happens. As it's very similar to meeting them in person, but you are doing that in a virtual space. We have seen some other organizers use the same exact feature and turning it into matchmaking or mentorship session in startups and investors. It's used different ways, but they are being creative in how they are using the platform. And even at CMX, we have a photo booth, we have the networking, we have sessions, and it's all different, and it plugs in an experience at the end of the day. So you're not using the platform as it is, you're into the event. And if there's no story or narrative connecting all of that together, it would be just a simple live streaming. And live streaming was there forever. It's not a new technology. We used to stream in-person events. Like, there's always cameras on the stage, and it's streamed. So I think people being creative in that is very nice. Examples for in-person events. My favorite in-person event, this is an event I went like 2 or maybe 3 years ago, and it was literally on the beach. It was a camp. It was a startup, uh, um, like a camp for startups to meet investors, to learn about few things, and mentorship. And there was a prize at the end of the day. But they literally booked a certain area on the beach, and they had tents. So each startup can stay. It was like 3 days event. Can stay the 3 nights on a tent. and it's marketed with their name, and you can just around, and it's a really nice format, and I think I haven't seen that before.
I think creativity is very important here. I can add something also here. Yeah, I think what separates a great event from another event is actually how creative the organizers are about creating and solving problems and offering different solutions and creating the experience. So I think other example actually of the difference between the in-person and the virtual. So for example, networking in in-person events, the most like the most convenient way for people to network at events is like during lunch and people meeting each other by chance. There is like a serendipity about meeting people at events, and you cannot like replicate this in a virtual event. But as Mai said, some organizers actually like try to do this themselves, try to pick people randomly or like based on specific topics and add them in a room or invite them together or connect them together. So you will have to solve the problem in a different way, because I think I've seen some platforms actually try to mimic actually what happens in in-person events with having like halls and you walk and you see booths, but this is not a virtual experience. It doesn't work like this because you're still missing the in-person experience and you're actually not getting anything special out of this. So I really like how actually some organizers are creative by solving these problems and figuring out fun ways to solve them.
Yeah, to me, this is actually one of the most inspiring things about being community led is like you go to these large events or like these webinars or even like a trade show, and I don't have like those events are great for their own reasons, and depending on who you're serving, they're really valuable. But like what I'm trying to say is like when you give the community opportunity to engage in a real like fun, authentic way and not being scared to try and experiment with those things, I think you unlock something special, which is often why people show up in the first place, and that's where like leveraging and leaning on your community, listening to them and understanding what they care about and what they like. I mean, you see that at CMX play out. We have traditions like the standing ovation, or we have a puppy booth, which like I won't be offended if anyone leaves this talk right now and heads over there. These are things that like, because I think to Federica's question, like we're getting at like how do you keep engagement high, and it's often about finding these interesting and fun ways to be different and to step out a little bit. I want to go back to event strategy overall and goals. Another question was around, what if you have multiple goals for your event? How do you determine what's most important in terms of the way that you lay out your content, and your format? Like, how do you make sure that you execute against your strategy in a way that still holds engagement high and keeps attendees, coming back for more?
I think it's similar to actually like strategy in any business. You have to have like a main goal or strategy first, a main goal, and then you can have like supporting goals. But you need to have like one main goal, and you can pick this based on actually your community, what works for them, your values. Why are you starting this? And then you can have supporting goals. But you need to be able to identify actually what is the single most important thing for you, because you will have to take a lot of decisions and you will have to make a lot of tough decisions. And if you want to achieve everything, we've seen this before, by the way, for some organizers, they want to do everything. And if you want to do everything at the end, sometimes every idea is very nice, but at the end, the event is, you cannot describe, like, you cannot get out having this, like, I like this part or I got out of with this value. It's like a lot of things happening at the same time because there is no single goal for this event when they are trying to do so much at the same time. And I've seen this actually with some events. So I think again you will have to pick what is the most important thing for you first.
Just adding one thing here, I think to drive engagement, the event needs to be focused on the expectation or the communication that was given to attendees before the event. And if it's a networking event, then you need to leave space for people to network, and you need to give them different opportunities, different spaces. You can't have like an 8 straight hours of content on different stages, for example, and you expect people to just network with each others. I have seen some examples of events that have like few sessions, then they have a networking where people can just go here, try to reach out to different people, and sometimes even creating creative spaces for people to network, like you said, the puppy poos. So people will go there and try to figure out what is it. They will chat with other people who are there already. So some of these creative ideas will bring more engagement.
I love that. We've got about 90 seconds left. So, Mai, Nihal, I'll ask one more question. Let's talk about the future. Like, again, you've been doing this for so long. What keeps you excited about what's ahead? What are you optimistic about? Where do you see community-led events going?
You want to go first, Mai?
Sure. That's a great question. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
Yeah, go for it.
I think.
Go for it.
Perfect. I think the value of hosting a big event, it will be multiplied by if 1 year long event, or if you host multiple events every year. Instead of losing the connection that you have with your community or these or team members, you will have this year-long connection, and you can have weekly or monthly or whatever number of events.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we're going to be up for time here. Sorry, Nihal, we're going to run out of time. I just wanted to say, Mai, Nihal, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your thoughts and experience with us. Really, really grateful to have both of you on the Bevy team.
Thank you, everybody, so much. Quick chat emojis. Flood the chat with all of your favorite emojis to thank Mai and Nihal and JR for coming on and spitting some real wisdom. Thank you very much, you three.